Monty Mythen here, Editor-in-Chief of Top Med Talk. Welcome to today's Sunday special. This extraordinary piece features L. Bradley Schwartz, President and Founder of Greater National Advocates. So we're sitting at a meeting in Southern California, and this gentleman comes ambling over for a chat. It's a patient safety movement meeting that you'll hear more about in the main piece. And I go to shake his hand, and there's no hand there to shake. So Bradley gives me an elbow bump and sits down and explains to me how a number of years ago he lost both his hands and part of his legs in a very tragic series of medical illnesses. Well, Bradley, thank you for sitting down with us and explaining your amazing story, and thank you for the great work that you're doing. Let's have a listen. Top Med Talk.
Here we are at the 7th Annual World Patient Safety Summit in Huntington Beach, Southern California. I'm here, Desiree Chappell, with Top Med Talk, host for today, and I'm joined by my co-host, Monty Mythen, Editor-in-Chief for Top Med Talk. Hello, Monty.
Hey, Desiree, great to be here.
It is great to be here.
Running the desk today?
It is. You're the engineer. You're my lovely assistant. No, I'm just kidding.
We'll run with the assistant.
We're going to go with it.
I'll work on the lovely.
And so we've been really fortunate to be here at this meeting to sit down and have conversations with some of the presenters and the organizers. But one of the things we've been really excited about is to be able to sit down with some of the delegates and people that are here. And we are really fortunate to have two gentlemen that have come over here to talk to us at Top Med Talk. It is L. Bradley Schwartz. He's the president of the Greater National Advocates Society. Right?
Greater National Advocates Incorporated.
Okay, great. And anyway, I just wanted to thank you, Brad, so much for sitting down with us and chatting with us. We've had a couple minutes just to catch up and hear about your background and why you're here at the meeting, but I would love to share that with our Top Med Talk audience. So can you introduce yourself and
Sure.
give us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm actually an attorney, and I was an attorney until the age of, I'm going to back up.
Okay.
I'm 52 years old. At the age of 37, I was a lawyer who presented to the local hospital with a headache. Within a half an hour, I had my whole family, friends and family. I had classic symptoms of what I later found out to be was bacterial meningitis. But I happened to go to the hospital at the wrong time. It was a beautiful day. It was a Sunday, but it happened to be Mother's Day, and I had kind of like a skeleton crew. Didn't know it at the time. Signals didn't get transferred properly. Nothing was communicated. I went into the hospital with a headache and the early signs of a disease that could have been cured with a simple antibiotic. And about 10 hours later, I was dropped off at ICU without an antibiotic, and then I was put into a coma for about 30 days and woke up and found out I was going to lose all my limbs.
Oh, my gosh.
That experience prompted me to do something. I was a defense lawyer. I used to be the guy who would go into court and deny and defend cases and make sure that people who were injured didn't get money and didn't get compensation. I worked for mean, bad insurance companies that would do anything to save a dollar, and they would drag the cases out. And that's what I would do. And then I became a victim, and I became a victim of my own system.
Can I ask, you've obviously had some long-term effects. I mean, it's notoriously nasty disease and infection to get. What sort of long-term injuries? This is radio, so not everyone.
I got it.
We can see some of the challenges that you have.
I have I use a prosthesis on my left upper extremity below the elbow. It's a hook.
Yep.
I have a partial hand. I'm missing all the fingers on my right upper extremity. Below the knee on the right, I have an amputation, and I use a prosthetic leg. And I have a partial foot on the left. So I have full amputations at two extremities, partial amputations at the other two. I'm a quadruple amputee by definition.
So for one, I mean, many of the young clinicians listening may never have seen the manifestations of this terrible infection that you can get. But, back in the day when people were less prompt possibly in treating, it can cause that, as you say, that gangrenous loss of all four quadrants.
As I understand it, the septic process became so severe, I had disseminated at
intravascular DIC,
multi-system organ failure, which required vasopressors, which lowered the blood pressure, causing a lack of blood flow to the extremities in order to save the vital organs.
So you died around the edges, basically.
Exactly.
I'm sorry on behalf of our
Well, the body makes the choice.
Yeah.
What do I need more? Heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, or fingers and toes? And they made the right choice, thank God.
Looks like your brain hung in there, though.
Almost. Yeah, almost got there.
Any other loss of hearing or sight or anything?
I did go blind. I had a stroke during the coma, and it fortunately ended at the optic nerve of my right eye. So I do have blindness in my right eye.
And I'll be quiet in a second, Desiree. Sorry,
great.
Because as we talked about at the beginning, I'm a critical care physician. This is
your
been
wheelhouse.
my life for a long time. Our fundamental failing was the early recognition and the early administration of antibiotics, now drummed into everyone as being the key to surviving sepsis, prompt diagnosis and prompt administration. Is that where you think we let you down?
It was a cascade of horrible events.
Okay.
It was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The Surviving Sepsis campaign was in place at the time. It was poster-based at the time. I don't think the app was around yet, and we certainly don't have the apps that the patient safety movement is promoting right now. But there were posters about what you were supposed to do. My problem was, and I believe where the system failed me, is that I was an otherwise healthy 37-year-old person who was honest with the emergency room staff when they asked me if I had anything to drink within the last 24 hours. Yeah. And the fact that I told them that I had drank wine the night before led them to write down in that chart that there was a recent consumption of alcohol. Therefore, I got treated as somebody who was dehydrated and probably hungover, and I did not get the care that I needed. What was ignored more than anything is that I knew my body, and I'm not the kind of guy that goes to an emergency room unless it's necessary. Also, lab results all the systems were in place. I mean, the lab, they drew blood. The blood went up to the lab. They were ordered stat, and within an hour they came back, and they came back at panic level. Yeah. Panic levels for platelets, white blood count, you name it. There was clear development of sepsis. The labs were ignored, even though they were clearly marked. So I just became a firm believer that, there were handoffs, there were shift changes, I had moonlighters that were working that night. Everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong.
The perfect storm.
It was the perfect storm.
And tragically, still happening. Still reported, well, certainly in the United Kingdom, still reported in the popular press annually, is missing these things and getting on and doing the right thing. So everyone out there, take it all seriously, crack on and give the treatments as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I distracted you. I just wanted everyone to hear that. It's fantastic learning points for people. I can't, once again.
So for me, I was fortunate. Fortunate to survive and fortunate enough to be able to communicate what happened to me, and trying to.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. So, why are you here today? What are you here at the meeting for? I know you're a part of the Greater National Advocates. What is that, and what are you trying to do, and how's that come out of your experience?
Well, after I recovered and went through therapy and went back to becoming a lawyer, I decided that I was going to start helping people that had suffered from malpractice themselves. And I did, and a lot of phone calls came in. And I learned real quickly that most of the people that were calling me did not have a medical malpractice case. They had a bad situation with a hospital or a doctor that usually resulted from not being treated properly, poor communication, and they were pissed off and they wanted to sue the doctor in the hospital. All they knew about was calling a lawyer. But what they had was a systemic medical problem. They didn't have a medical malpractice case, even if they had a bad outcome. They just had a bad outcome. They needed somebody to walk them through it and tell them what their options were. Lawyers are notorious for hanging up the phone and saying, "I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do for you," but, I wanted to find a way to give people another option, even if they didn't have a case. They don't know who else to call. Yeah. But I find out that they're looking for help in the hospital system, which leads me to organizations. Through internet research, I discover that there are nurses, social workers, care managers, discharge planners, people that come from institutional and clinical backgrounds that call themselves patient advocates.
Yes.
And they are all over the United States of America right now looking to help people in hospitals, being discharged from hospitals, moving on from one facility to another, answer questions. They're out there. Yeah. I attended a few conferences and seminars across the United States. I met a whole number of people and decided that it would be a really good idea to try and bring as many of these people together under one sort of a brand like Greater National Advocates. Because if there's one thing that I've learned is it was hard enough for me to find out about these people. I'm a firm believer that if I would have had somebody in the room with me, and like I said, friends and family were there. Everybody was advocating for me. But sometimes friends and family are not enough.
Yes.
And if I would have had somebody there to put the pieces together, ask the right questions, somebody with a clinical background, second set of eyes, this would not have happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
What a fantastic idea. So how's it manifesting itself?
Well, we're here.
Yeah.
Which is great. We're in the right place.
And soon when we get this out there, thousands more people will be listening, which is great. Our partner who funded and got this going is actually a lawyer.
Okay.
He's very passionate about he's predominantly a civil rights lawyer.
Well, this is a civil right.
Exactly.
Patient safety is a civil right.
He's very passionate about this, so we must get you together for a chat.
Good.
Fantastic. Martin Howe.
I love it.
Thank you for supporting this, but this is a great story.
So that's my story. That's my passion. I didn't know how to accomplish it. And that's where Joe came in here because, we split up for a little bit. He moved out to Hollywood to do his Hollywood stuff that I'll tell you about.
Yeah, here. Well, introduce your friend.
Joe Frankel is one of my lifelong friends, partner in crime all the way through high school and college, and for a number of years after that. When I started getting involved in patient advocacy, what I wanted to do is, start local. And we did start local by just promoting a couple of small events, trying to bring people together to see if it was viable, and it was. Out of the events, a monthly breakfast session started with local advocates. And then we decided that, we've got a little group here. Why don't we let people know that we exist? Because what you find out with a small industry where people are trying to get the word out, they're all trying to do it themselves. Yeah. You've got like nurses and social workers who are going out to nursing homes, selling the nursing homes on their services and educating them. That's great. Yeah. But I want to get it to the masses so that people have the knowledge that they can get help when they're not in a nursing home. I want advocacy to be as commonplace as people think about calling a lawyer for a malpractice case. I want hospitals when they are when you're going through triage or just initial intake, when they take down your insurance information and your primary care physician. I want there to be a line there that says, who's your patient advocate?
Yeah.
So how has Joe helped you achieve those
goals?
Oh,
my God.
Joe,
should I jump in?
Please do. Yeah.
So Brad contacted me. He was forming a group with some people in Chicago called Greater Chicago Advocates. And the group itself was meeting on a regular basis. And they were accomplishing a lot as a group and sharing ideas about patient advocacy and how they can make a difference. And Brad asked me if I would help him brand the group and put a website together. And I did that. And while I was doing it, curiosity got the best of me. And I think, our lifelong friendship and wanting to help Brad make a difference, I took a deeper dive. And I identified that although the patient advocacy community, the business-to-business community, was somewhat prolific in terms of their communication, in terms of the amount of people that were part of the movement, that the general public was completely unaware of patient advocacy. We did some sample studies, nothing official. We have since then done some research, and we have some pretty impressive statistics that show exactly what we found out with our little studies, which is that most of the general population has no idea what a patient advocate is. For that matter, when we found out that medical errors are the third leading cause of death in the United States, we realized that most of the people don't know anything about that either. I think people think they go into the hospital and they're going to get cured. Mm-hmm. when the reality is that when they go into the hospital, they're at the most jeopardy. And it's not just hospitalization that's a concern for patients. They also have to deal with the financial ramifications that come along with the healthcare system. So there's a lot of different components to healthcare advocacy. There's a lot of specialists out there that can help people. The bottom line is the general public is not aware that patient advocates exist, and until they're into a situation that might be a crisis, they're not even made aware that there's people out there that could potentially help. So what we're trying to do is we are trying to make sure that the public becomes aware. We have a mission. This is a not-for-profit, and the idea is that we want to wake up the nation to the life-saving benefits of patient advocacy and steer patients and loved ones to a place where they can quickly and confidently get the help they need. And the second part of that is where they can quickly and confidently get the help they need is a portal. Yeah. And that, go ahead.
And how do you find it?
It is, well, right now we are still building out the national portal. We have a lot of groups right now across the country. We have 5 different regions we've divided the country into, and we have advocates from all over the country that are participating in those sites. Yes. But GNAnow.org, which you can go to and you can check out the mission, is set to go live in the spring this year. So we're going to pool all the national assets together into one central depository, and it's going to be geared towards patients and loved ones. So they can get there, they can learn quickly about the benefits of patient advocacy, what type of advocate they might need, put in their city or their zip code, and they can find an advocate near them that can help for their situation.
And if people want to get a little bit of a heads up at the moment, is there somewhere to look at? You have a current website?
I'd say that we said GNAnow.org is not live yet. It is live yet. Okay. It's just live in its current form, which is exactly what you're talking about. It's a welcoming page for people to join the mission, get involved, learn more about it, and if you have skills, to sign up to become an advocate.
We'll get that in the show notes. Great. Before I hand back to you, Desiree, sorry, I was going to say, is it happening in any way, shape, or form better or worse elsewhere in the world? Is there any way we could look to? Because this is a fantastic idea.
I would say that due to the structure of our healthcare system, we are probably the most ripe institution for it.
Gotcha.
It's not getting any better. There's public awareness about how complex and overwhelming the system can be. For a while, the people that I'm talking about used to be called healthcare navigators or patient navigators, but it's taken on a different role. It's becoming a little bit broader than that because, like Joe was saying, these people can help with other issues too, like the insurance issues, like the billing issues, like the clinical stuff.
Because in our system, as I say, bad stuff's still happening, the National Health Service. But if you're a national, you wake up, there's never a sort of financial crisis that follows, if you see what I mean. So that extra complexity is in your system.
Yes, unfortunately.
Which needs a lot of understanding.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of wrap it up here, so if I'm a patient and I am going into the hospital or I'm, have to go even emergently in my patient's family, or my family would want to reach out, what's the best way to, do we ask that when we arrive at the hospital, like I'd like an advocate, or what do you do?
You could, but, the way that the term patient advocate is being used these days is the patient advocate that works for the hospital and usually the risk management department at the hospital.
Okay.
Their job is to advocate, but also to advocate so that the hospital doesn't get blamed for a bad result or that the patient, it's almost like a customer satisfaction branch of the hospital. We're talking about private, independent patient advocates. And unfortunately, given the complexities of the health system and the costs involved, the biggest hurdle that we're ever going to have is the paying aspect of it. Because right now it is self-pay, but the whole reason that we're going on awareness and public empowerment is because we believe that if people know that these people exist, that they can help, they're going to be able to demand it from their employers, from their unions, from the credit card that they use to provide these services, so that if there is an emergency, they can call that number and get somebody like this to help them out that's working for their best interests, not the institution.
Yeah. All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for sitting down. This is an enlightening conversation. Thank you so much, Brad, for sharing your story.
Thank you.
It's so important that for many of our, or all of our listeners, to hear the different aspects and hear, people from different backgrounds and hear stories like yours to touch us, that we can change practice.
And let us know what we can do to help in the future. This
absolutely.
is really, really important work. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys for having us.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you guys so much.
Top Med Talk.
Nick Majerison here. Thanks for listening to Top Med Talk. Now, before we let you go, it's important that we remind you to subscribe to Top Med Talk. That way you'll never, ever miss another episode. Also, if we could encourage you to join us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, pretty much every single social media platform, we're there. Join us. And finally, check out topmedtalk.com. If you go to our website, you can subscribe to email updates. That way we can always tell you where we're going to be, what we're going to be doing, and how you can join us. topmedtalk.com and click on the section marked email updates. Finally, Top Med Talk is proud to act as the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, Evidence-Based Perioperative Medicine. We'd love you to find out more about them as well. ebpom.org is their website. That's ebpom.org. And if you go to ebpom.org/meetings, you can find out about some of the wonderful meetings that we attend and cover across the year here on Top Med Talk. That's ebpom.org/meetings.